Hey, it's Jason from Codemanship with another video in my series on my adventures with ChatGPT and in particular GPT-4, the latest version of OpenAI's large language model. I've done 3 videos so far, and I've done quite a lot more experimentation with GPT-4 to see what it can and, more importantly, what it can't do, or what we shouldn't trust it to do. Um, and I thought it'd be fun to tackle a legacy code exercise. So this particular version is a C# version, .NET Core, and I will post a link to the GitHub repo that this is from if you want to try this exercise yourself, whether you want to do it manually or whether you want to use some kind of AI assisted programming tool like GPT-4. So this is from the Guitar Shack exercise. This is a messed up version of Guitar Shack that I've created that has all of the code that does everything we need to alert the store manager when a product needs reordering. And the way this works is it fetches information about the product we're interested. This happens when we make a sale, by the way. So whenever we sell a product, we check to see what the stock of that product is at the current time. So we fetch the product information from an external dependency, a warehouse system, another web service that's hosted on Amazon AWS. And then we calculate over a 30-day range. So going back 30 days from the date of the sale, we calculate what the average number of sales per day of that product has been. So how many do we sell a day? And then we multiply that by the manufacturer's lead time, the number of days that if we were to order more of that product, we would have to wait for before it would arrive in our warehouse. And the idea of this system is to alert the store manager that we're going to run out of stock before we run out of stock, so that they can order more and hopefully we don't lose as many sales. So that's the real purpose of this piece of code here. It's a big ball of mud. It's pretty complicated. Everything is essentially in one big nasty method. All the code to fetch the information about the sales history and the product stock, etc., etc. That's all embedded in here, which means that we can't test this code without actually connecting to those endpoints, without connecting to those external dependencies. Now, the scenario that I've created for this exercise is we have been asked to make a change to this legacy code. In Michael Feather's excellent book, Working Effectively with Legacy Code, strangely the only book about legacy code that I'm aware of, which is odd when you think about it, because most developers are working on legacy code most of the time. He describes a process for safely changing legacy code, and he has a nice definition, a nice neat definition of legacy code, which is that legacy code essentially is code that does not have fast running automated tests. In other words, if we were to change this code for any reason, there's a good chance that we might break it, and it would be difficult to find out. It would take a long time to find out. So in his process, I'm praising it enormously here. There's a whole great book about it, but in his sort of algorithm, if you like, or his process for changing legacy code safely, the first order of business is to get fast running tests around the code you've been asked to change. Now, the change that we're pretending we've been asked to make by the business is to this logic here, calculating the start date and the end date of our the period of sales history over which we calculate the average sales per day. So at the moment, it's based on average sales per day in the previous 30 days, but that doesn't take into account seasonal variations. For example, if we were to sell a guitar on the last day of November, looking back 30 days, average sales per day are likely to be considerably lower than looking forward 30 days because you've got Christmas in December. So what the business, in inverted commas, there is no business, this is all fake, but what the businesses have asked us to change is that date range. So rather than looking back 30 days in the current year, they want us to look forward 30 days in the previous year. So looking forward, so our start date and our end date are now, the start date is now today, but last year, and the end date is 30 days ahead of that. So we're looking forward 30 days to take into account seasonal variations. So that's the change we've been asked to make. And if we were to make this change safely, we would want to get tests around this code so that we can be confident that when we're changing the start date and the end date, the thing still works. We also want to make that change in a test-driven way, so we want some way of actually testing what start date and end date were used. That's currently opaque. That's not visible from the outside. So how can we do that? Now, there are no automated tests for this, but there is a way of testing it manually. I've rigged up a little command line application here, a little main method, that essentially does a calculation for whatever product we specify in the parameters when we call this main method, when we call this program. And I've chosen the product 811 and a sale value of 50. I think there's something like 23 in stock or something. So we're definitely, if we sell 50 of those, we definitely run out and we need to order more. And then I've faked, we've got this interface for sending alerts to the store manager, reorder alerts, and I've got a fake one here basically. A mock, if you like, that outputs a message telling us which product we need to reorder, and also the product's description to make it a little friendlier for the store manager. So we can run this. I've actually rigged it up. If I show you the run configuration, let's take a look and edit that configuration. You'll see that I've rigged it up with those program arguments, product 811, and we're selling 50. And that should definitely trigger a reorder alert, which we'll see in our output then. You'll see I've just run it, in fact. So we're calling the program there with 811 and 50, and then we get this fake alert, basically this alert message. So we can manually test it. We can run it and test by eye. And with legacy code, you might have to live with this for a while. But ideally, I'd want these tests to be automated. I want them to be unit tests. So what I'm going to ask GPT-4 to do is to help me refactor this code, first of all, to make it the code that we've been asked to change unit testable. And then I'm going to ask it to create at least one unit test to reproduce the test we've got here, probably 2 unit tests, actually. We'll ask it about that. And then I'm going to ask it to write a test for the new date range to figure out how do we test what the new start date and end date are. And that test will fail until we make it pass by changing that date range. And then we've made the change the business has asked us to make. We've got some unit tests around this code. So I'll then ask it if there's any more refactoring it might want to do to make life easier for the next person that's been asked to change this code. Because as I said, it is a bit of a mess. Okay. We call that the Boy Scout rule, by the way, if you've not come across this. You always leave the campsite cleaner and untidier than you found it. So if you're asked to make a change to nasty legacy code, once you've made that change and you've got unit tests around that part of the code, take advantage of that. You can now test it very quickly. So do a bit more cleaning up, do a bit more refactoring, simplify it, make it more readable, remove some duplication, etc., etc. To make life easier for the next person. So let's get on with this. So I'm going to, first of all, I'm not going to give it all of the code, but I am, because it can probably infer quite a lot from this. But let's copy this. I'll give it this, and then I'll give it the command line code as well. Okay, right, where are you? GPT-4. Okay, so hi. I don't know why I'm saying hi. I've been asked to make change to some legacy code that doesn't have unit tests. First of all, let me show you the code I've been asked to change. So, oops, that's not it. Gets me every time, the copy and paste thing. Control C. Let's try again. Control V. Okay. And hit enter. Let's make a start. Let's see what it says. In C# code that monitors stock for a product in a Guitar Shack store. When there is a sale, the on-site item is called with the product ID and the quantity sold. When check the remaining stock is low enough to trigger a reorder alert. Before making any changes to the code, it would be a good idea to create unit tests to ensure that the existing functionality is not broken. To make this code more testable, I recommend refactoring it using dependency injection for better separation of concerns. Okay. Accept an HTTP client parameter in its constructor. So it's going off, and before I've even told it what the changes I've been asked to make, it's already telling me how to refactor it. It's having a little think. Okay. Right. Okay. Now you can create mock implementations of iReorder alert and HTTP client for your unit tests. This will. Would you like to know what change I've been asked to make before we consider refactoring? So the first thing you really need to do is to think about what change you've been asked to make and where that code is. The existing code calculates daily average product sales from the previous 30 days sales history. The business would like to use a different date range that looking at the next 30 days sales in the previous year. What refactoring would you recommend to make this logic unit testable? So it's going off on one here. I think it's kind of missed the point because what I want to know is, does the stock monitor still work? Um, if the date range calculator is mocked, how are we testing that logic? So I can foresee that we're going to run out of we're going to hit our limit of interactions here before we've even got somewhere. Okay. Right. So it's kind of missing the point. It's kind of missing the point here. We want to know that the stock monitor still works, and we want to be able to, and we don't necessarily want separate tests for all of that. Is there a way we can refactor the stock monitor class so that we can test whether or not reorder alerts are sent for a sale, after a sale, I should say, after a sale, and the start date and end date used to to fetch the product's sales history. So I'm really nudging it here. Mm-hmm. It's getting closer. Okay. It's still obsessed with this date range calculator. It's still obsessed with this date range calculator. So at the moment, all we want to know is how are we going to test that date logic? That's our first priority. So you're hoping it will do the minimum amount of refactoring to make that unit testable, as well as making on sale unit testable. And it's not. Okay. Now it's getting complicated. And what mocking framework is it using here? Okay. Mm-hmm. Right. So it is. I'm not sure I understand. We're a mock there and we're verifying. What are we verifying here? No, it's gone off the deep end here. Okay. Let's reset. Here's the original code. Our goal is firstly to make on sale unit testable. While making it possible to test what start and end date were used. Let's try again. So I think I can copy and paste the code in. Try again. Just enable testing. So you can refactor someone class by creating separate methods to fetch product and sales information. How does that make it unit testable? It's obsessed with this date range calculator, which is completely, it's a total red herring, because that means if we're faking the date range calculation, we're not actually testing the date range. So it's absolutely obsessed with this. So I'm going to have to ask it to forget the date range calculator. So if it creates separate private methods, I'm failing to see how this means that we can stub the product and the sales history information, the sales total. We are going to run out of interactions here, but it has become obsessed with the date range calculator, which is completely missing the point. If that's a mock or a stub, we're not actually testing the date range calculation. Forget the date range calculator. How can we stub fetching product and sales history? How can we stub and forget the date range. How can we stop fetching product and sales? Try again. We are going to run out of interactions. So it's become obsessed with making, for some reason, making the date range calculations swappable by a dependency injection, but not fetching from these external endpoints. So we're getting somewhere now. We're actually tackling the real problem, which is that in order to unit test on sale, we need to be able to we need test doubles for those external endpoints so that we can just get a product for our test and a sales total for our test. Okay. So we now have a product. We now have sales. Unit test. Okay. So let's go with this. So we need, it's done it in two parts here. Okay. So let's copy the code. It's not giving me everything I need, by the way. So again, you would need to be a programmer in order to do this, but let's, yes, it's not actually done the complete refactoring. So we would need to do the refactoring for it. Let me just go back and take a look what it's done. Right, okay. Yeah, it's essentially saying you're going to have to do this refactoring because I'm not going to show you all of the code. Now here's a little fun fact. Here is the current client code for on sale. It's a command line application. I think we should call it a console. I think that's what they call it, a console application. It's a console application. Please show me the complete code for these refactorings. Please show me the complete code for these refactorings. This is where it starts to get hairy. All right, Control C. So it tends to be with GPT, it's like a one-shot deal. If it doesn't get it right first time, you can tweak it a little bit, but as you're seeing, it starts to sort of, we start to go into the deep dark forest. We leave the safe path. Okay, please show me the complete code for these refactorings. In other words, make that client code work. Why is it injecting the HTTP client? I mean, that's something we would at some point probably wish to do, but it's doing more refactorings than it's been asked to do. The HTTP client is a complete red herring here, because if we've got interfaces for product fetcher and sales fetcher, we don't need to worry about that. That would be maybe something we could do later. So it's now refactoring code that's not going to get unit tested, very importantly, because in our unit test, we're not going to be using an HTTP client. We're not going to be using the actual implementations of these. So let's see how we do with this. And again, that's not the complete code, but right, let's first of all take that first part and we'll put that in a little file. So let's copy the code. So actually, let's put it all. I can do these refactorings later. Let's put it all in the stock monitor class for now. Oh, no, I think it has assumed that it's all in one file. So let's create file. Let's call it iProduct fetcher. So it does require me to do quite a lot of work. We've got some. Let's input our missing references. The rest, so it assumed it was all in the same file there. In actual fact, we want sales fetcher in its own. So let's put that in its own file. So already I'm getting out of step with it, which is going to be interesting. iSales fetcher. Dear. And again, we need to do an import here, which it didn't do. I bet because it assumed it had already been done in the original stock monitor file. So we have our two interfaces. Should it be public namespace? No, just namespace. Right, getting my C# head back on. Now we need the so this is bad naming, by the way. It's usually a bit of a clue. Let's go find our product fetcher. It's normally a little bit of a clue. So we need, going from here, we need our implementations. So let's start with the product fetcher. This no doubt will also require imports. So people saying, oh, you can do this if you're not a programmer. No, you can't. You do need to know what you're doing. Okay, that's better. And we need our sales fetcher. iSales fetcher and sales fetcher, bad naming, but we can fix that later. Okay, let's go grab the code for our sales fetcher. There we go. Whoop. So it's doing, the first thing I'm going to note here is it's doing too many refactorings in one go. It doesn't really know what refactoring is as a process, and that's to be understandable, because it's only seeing static code when it's being trained. It's not seeing the evolution of that code. It doesn't see how you would do this kind of long form refactoring. It would also greatly raise the risks for me of breaking the software, because we're making so many changes before I can retest it. Luckily, I'm using version control, which means, oh, no, we've got too much there. Let's get rid of you. You are just the sales fetcher. Let's bring in our imports. So we're changing far too many things. A lot of red ink here. What's, oh, yeah, because I've brought a bunch of stuff that I didn't need. Copy code, blah, blah, blah. iSales fetcher, product fetcher, too much stuff. Way too much stuff. So where's the last? It's complaining, but I don't really know why. Yeah, because there's a bunch of comments in there. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of these imports, and then we can. So it's quite, as I've noted in other videos, it is quite a hit and miss process, this copying and pasting back and forth. As I've said before, much tighter integration within the project itself of GPT-4 would probably help enormously. But from what I've seen of things like Copilot X, and we've not seen much of it yet, so I'm only going on the short videos I've seen that announced it. The integration is not as tight as they're making out. To some extent, it's just bringing the copying and pasting parts, bringing the chat window into your IDE, which will help a little bit, but not a huge amount. You still have to try and keep everything in step yourself. So that needs addressing. Okay, we've got a sales fetcher. We now need to go back and rewrite our on sale method and our class. Okay, so actually, no, let's redo our main method. Okay, and then we can rewrite our own cell. So this is a lot of change, basically. This is making me very nervous about the amount that we're changing. I would say there's a considerable likelihood that this isn't going, not there, it's in the program, a considerable likelihood that this isn't going to work when I try to run it. So there's our new main method, and there's the import again. And stock monitor, we've changed stock monitor, so that's fine, because we've got a listing for that. Let's go find it. So that was previously on. Where are we? Our product, there we go. Sales fetcher, that's our. Oh yeah, we kind of need there's a real one. There's our product fetcher interfaces. On sale was the new version of this. Right, let's go back. This is all very hairy. It's making me very nervous, but let's go with it. So as a time saver, not really, is it? It's not really a time saver. And we need to change the constructor as well. So let's do that. Go back and find its reworked constructor. There we go. Well, it's the the beginning of the class. So all a little hairy. So here, essentially, we're redoing the whole thing. All the red ink has disappeared. I think that's the whole refactoring. That made me feel very nervous, and I don't think it really saved me. I could have done it quicker just using the automated refactoring tools and a lot safer. But the moment of truth, we should be able to run this now again, this little console app, and we should see the same output as before. Please reorder product 811. So let's do it, and fingers crossed. Oh, okay, it is working. Okay. Right, so that was pretty hairy. That was pretty hairy. That felt like a real leap. And I am genuinely concerned now that we are, again, and as happened in the previous video when we were doing some TDD, that we're going to run out of we're going to hit the interaction limit for our 3-hour sort of session and end up having to sort of call it a day there. In the real world, not very practical at all. Okay, for these kind of long form refactorings. Right. That appears to be working. Thanks. Don't know why I'm saying thanks. Could you please write me a unit test for on sale for product 811, 50 units sold, 811, 50 units sold, the product, let's change that. We're not going to go with that. Let's go 1 unit sold. The product should have just enough stock to take it to the reorder level and trigger an alert. Just enough stock. So I'm going to ask it to figure out and a suitable lead time to take it to the reorder level and trigger an alert. Test that the alert is triggered. Let's see what it does. Here's a sample test. I don't want a sample test. I want the actual test. Don't give me samples. It's doing an async test. Doing it to range act assert thing. Noted that in other programming languages where the convention is different, it uses different comments. I don't want it to use these comments at all. I'm well aware of the components of a test of logic. I don't need this. It is like it is a bit like sort of when you're learning a new dance, and you can tell when someone's learning to dance because you can see them counting, mouthing the words 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And that's, to me, a range act assert or given when then is the same. Yes, we know every test has a setup, an action, and assertions. But every time I've had this conversation with GPT, it's argued with me usually that they should be there. Okay, right, it's given me a test. Let's check to see, and we'll also see what dependencies might be missing as well that we need to bring in. So I think I'm going to create that in a separate project. So let's add a new project, and we can probably go straight off the bat and say a unit test project, please. Guitar Shack. Let's call it test. Project name contains Guitar Shack .test. Right. Okay. NUnit C# .NET 6. We're off to the races. Okay, and we will need let's see if it can do it automatically. First of all, oh no. Wrong, legacy Guitar Shack. So we need to add a reference to that. So let's do that. Right. Okay, that should fix some stuff. And let's see how clever Rider is. Create type mark, blah, blah, refactor this, generate code. No, we're going to have to do it. So let's go take a look at NuGet. And let's see. It's installed all my test dependencies, but not my mock dependency. Thank you for that message. And we just need it there. Okay. We've still got one little problem here. One little bit of red ink. Yes. Namespace Guitar Shack tests. Guitarshack.test is what we really want. So let's pull you out of here. Pull you out of there. We can refactor later if necessary. But for now, we have a test. It's all looking green. The moment of truth. Okay, we're getting a mock exception. Okay. Expected invocation on the mock once, but was 0 times, so send was not called. Right, so that means our reorder alert is not being triggered. So let's take a look at its test data. Right, it's telling us we have a stock of 10 and a lead time of 5 days. Right, where's our sales total? 30. So what it's saying is we're selling 1 a day. So this is what it did last time. So what it's decided here is that if we've got 10 in stock and we sell 1, the lead time is 5 days. The average daily sales is going to be 1 per day. So the reorder level is going to be 5. So what it's saying here is that 10 minus 1 is less than or equal to 5, which of course it isn't. So let's get it to change the test data. Hi, this test fails because the data values you've chosen don't trigger a reorder alert. Let's see how we get on with that. So to ensure it triggers reorder alert. In this example, I adjust the stock level, lead time, and sales data to ensure the reorder alert is triggered. Let's see if it can do it. So this is one thing that people have observed is that while GPT-4 can do some pretty sophisticated things when it comes to maths, its arithmetic is it's pretty questionable. Okay, right, we've got a sale of 300. So it's basically saying, let's sell, it's picking a really big number. I might take it to task on that and say, so could you pick a number that takes us to the boundary? But yeah, if we, oh no, I don't think actually, right. So we're selling 300 per day. We've got stock of 21 and a lead time of 5. So that means in reality, so the reorder level would be 10 per day. The reorder level would be 50. So this data suggests we have already passed the reorder level. Can you choose test data that specifically takes the remaining stock to the exact reorder level? I did say yesterday, actually, in the video that I recorded on TDD, that I thought it might be useful for generating test cases, test data. I'm beginning to think I might have to eat those words. Yeah, we are going to hit our interaction limit, I think. So we might not actually get the change done that we wanted to get done. So the refactorings it did eventually worked, but they made me feel really unsafe. I would have liked it to have gone, well, let's just do this bit first, but it has never seen that process. I don't see how it can, because it's presented with a fait accompli. It's presented with the code as it is when it was checked in. So probably not sort of being able to see a sequence of refactorings. Maybe if you're like me and you're committing very frequently during that process, you might be able to present it with that. But I don't know whether it's being trained on many versions of a particular code base, or whether it's just being trained on the most recent commit or whatever. So I think refactoring is a process that it can do, but not in a very disciplined way, in a way that makes me nervous. Okay, product stock of 22. Let's just go back up and see what it's done here. Right. So total sales is 105. The stock is 22, days of 5. So we're selling 21 per day, sorry, 30 to 100. I'm having to do 105 divided by 30 is, it's roughly 3, 3 or 4, 3.5. I think it is. It's 3.5, isn't it? Yeah. So 3.5 times 5 is exactly 3.5 times 5 is 15, and 17.5. And we're selling how many? 1. Let's just go back and do the maths. 3.5 units sold per day. After selling 1 unit, the remaining stock is 21, which is equal to the reorder level. So 5 times 3.5 is 17.5, rounded up to 21. Why is 17.5 rounded up to 21 and not 18? Yeah, this is really saving me some time here. It's really bad at arithmetic. So yeah, I'm going to have to eat those words. Don't use this to generate test data. Or if you do, double check the test data. Okay. So what has it chosen here? Let's just, stock is at 19, right. So we're getting somewhere now after several corrections. Now imagine doing this for a bunch of unit tests. Slightly frightening. Okay. Let's see, it's not giving me the whole file. Yeah, it is. It's giving me the whole file. So let's just take the test. This is the bit I find quite precarious. That I can't. It's very hard. I'm selecting upwards, I think would be safer. So let's copy that. Let's see what we get. Okay. Yeah, helpful comment there, actually. So I like that. I want those. I so want to get rid of the arrange actor cert, but we had a conversation with it last week about that. And that was fun. Right, let's run our tests and see if this has made a difference. This should, I think, trigger a reorder alert. So let's find out. Bingo, we have a passing test. Let's add a second test where no alert is triggered, just so that we're covering both of our bases here. Thanks, this test passes. Can you write second test for a case when no alert is sent? So as I've observed in previous videos, I get a genuine sense this is not saving me any time. That the amount of explaining and rework and correcting that's going on here, plus the level of nervousness that I have at the sheer number of changes it will make before I can retest it, makes me wonder whether this is worth it, frankly. So this time I'm hoping it's chosen the stock level of 20. Okay. Yeah, so it's chosen stock level of 20. So eventually it gets into its ballpark and it's more comfortable here in the way that it's working from the original test. Let's take this test method. So again, a lot of copying and pasting going on here, and it's all a little precarious, and particularly from the Chat GPT interface. Okay, so we've got a second test. Let's run them both. So it's saying that should never be called. Okay, that's good. I'm happy with that, apart from the arrange actor cert thing. But we're going to leave that for another day. I think I've used too many interactions already on this. So we're in a position where we have unit tests for our existing behavior. Now what I want it to do is I want it to write a failing test for the new date range. So, okay, excellent. That test passes. Can you now write a failing test for the change to the date range I've been asked to make? Let's see. Remember, it should now be the next 30 days in the previous year. A failing test. So it gets that. It gets that we're going TDD, if you like. So that's good. Because, oh, so fetches data for the next 30 days of previous year. Range. We've got our mock product fetches. So we could probably, there's a bit of setup here that's not really necessarily making the test easier to understand, that we could probably refactor. So when you're refactoring duplication out of tests, I think it's very important to leave the data in the test somehow in a way that is self-explanatory. Beyond that, I think, you can fill your boots. Right. Off it goes. It's explaining what it's done. The test will fail initially as the existing implementation doesn't use the correct date range. So let's take a look at the data. Expected start date from now. Now, I'm uncomfortable here with it using the current date in these tests. But this would be part of the Boy Scout rule, basically, that we would say, okay, now that we've got this change, because it's all purely relative. It's all purely relative at the moment. So this test will always pass. But the previous two tests should still pass as well, because it doesn't matter whether we're using the current data or not. So I think we can live with this. I think we can live with this. Okay, let's take all of that. Oh, no. Remember, Jason, when you're copying and pasting from this window, to go up so you don't take a bunch of stuff that you didn't want to with you. Right, let's add that test. Okay. No green ink. It looks reasonable. So what it's saying is the start date now should be the current date minus 1 year. And it's added a day, so it's made it tomorrow. That's interesting. Okay, and then it's added 30 days to that. Okay. Okay, we'll go with that interpretation. This is why one thing I am going to do with GPT, I want to see how it gets on with behavior-driven development, in particular with the Gherkin syntax. So I might do an exercise with it along these lines where we write something like Gherkin type tests and see how it gets on with that, and also see how it gets on with driving a system design from those. But for now, let's go with this. Let's run that test and see what happens. It should fail because the dates are wrong. The date range is wrong. Let's just make sure that is the case. We're getting a mock exception. Fail, but with 0 times. So we're not getting any matches there, basically. So now let's get GPT-4 to please make the simplest change to on sale that will pass this test. So as it is when, particularly when you're pairing with people, particularly when you're pairing with people remotely, you do need to be very specific about which part of the code you're talking about, and that's a good skill to build for pairing and that kind of thing. But also, as it turns out, it's a good skill to build for working with a tool like ChatGPT. You do need to be very specific about which class or which method or which block of code you're talking about. We don't have line numbers or anything else to go on, so you need to be very, very clear when you explain things. But that's not such a bad skill to develop anyway. I think every developer should try and build that skill of being very specific about what you want them to do. Okay, in this updated version, start date and end date variables are set to the next 30 days. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. So let's take that as is. I think this is going to work. Okay, and into our project, let's go find our stock monitor. And it's just the implementation, isn't it? Huh? It got a lot more complicated because we're not actually using the formatted start date. Let me just get it to fix that actually. Hi, what are formatted start date, formatted end date being used for? It didn't leave them in there. They weren't in there to begin with. So this is something that worries me. Its internal model of the code seems to drift. And that's very worrying because in a longer sessions, for example, a long form refactoring, it gets out of step, not just with your project, but with itself. And that's something that they really, really need to work on. Now, the obvious solution is to have it not have its own model of the code, to have it essentially have access to your project, your model of the code. And I made the suggestion in my first video that maybe one way to do that would be a shared GitHub repo or something like that. So it can always go back to the original, to the code as it is now. And the way we would interact is not through all this copying and pasting, but through essentially pushing to the same branch with tests and stuff in place probably as well. Okay, let's try again. Let's see how we get on. So, come on. So as you can see, this has not been the time saver we thought it was going to be. And generally speaking, with GPT, it's not really that much of a time saver in these sort of long form interactions, these real conversations. Okay, that test is passing now. Brilliant. So we've made the change we've been asked to make. And now we've got some unit tests around on sale, which means it's now safe to do more refactorings to it. So we're going to apply the Boy Scout rule to finish off. I'm going to ask it if there are any refactorings. Let's just Control A, Control C. Good. That all our tests, I should say, all our tests are passing now. Let's see if it knows the Boy Scout rule to the code that's covered. You choose your word by unit tests. Can you suggest any ways in which on sale could be made easier to change? Okay, yeah, make that a separate method. Extract the logic for determining if an alert should be sent into a separate method. So it's going to have a crack at this. So this is pleasing. I think using GPT-4, I've seen people doing this in videos, haven't seen it in the wild yet, but using GPT-4 to review your code and make suggestions for refactoring, I think could be of some value. Because it does have a kind of inbuilt understanding of certain, basic design principles. That's quite a long method name there. Certain design principles like solid and dry and so on and so forth. So it could be a way of just reviewing the quality of your code. Also, the readability of your code. So let's take a look at this now. These refactorings make the on-sale method more readable and easier to modify. The code is now separated into smaller, more focused methods. I'm inclined to agree. Let's just go back and see what it's done there. So should send reorder alert. Okay. Product quantity sales. Yeah, okay, we can go with that. Product needs reordering. Should send reorder alert. So from a readability point of view, yeah, it's wordy though. I might go for something like, because you want some kind of Boolean name, instead of should send reorder alert, I might go with just needs reordering. But there you go. Let's go with its suggestion. Let's take all of it and see whether we've broken our code. There's one final. Okay, we're not seeing any red ink. Moment of truth. Okay, so I would have hoped that it would want to modularize it a bit more. But that's a good start. And remember, with the Boy Scout rule, you're just trying to make life a little bit better for the next person. It doesn't have to be a wholesale refactoring. It's just like, well, let's just clean up a few other things. And because these are now in their own methods, someone else later on, if they were to change this code, could say, well, maybe some of these methods belong in their own classes and so on and so forth. So they could kind of, it would make it a little easier. It's taken a first step that's left the code. I would agree. It's more readable than it was. It's easier to understand than it was. So let's live with that. And that, I think, is a good place to park. So that has not been a complete disaster. It took us a while to get GPT-4 into the ballpark of where I really wanted it to go. It became obsessed with mocking the date range calculation, which I don't understand how that was going to make it unit testable. Quite honestly, I think it had its plan, but it was it was going too far. Maybe that logic does belong somewhere else, but that doesn't solve our problem of how do we unit test on sale. So it became obsessed with that. As I've observed on multiple occasions now, it's not so great at arithmetic. So you really do need to keep an eye on that. Where it does come into its own is in suggesting or explaining refactorings you might need to do. So I can see less experienced developers, for example, getting some value from this, some basic value from this. But again, you need to be specific and know what questions to ask. So I've seen people do refactoring videos where they've given it specific design principles or specific code smells to look for, and that has steered the result in a different direction. For example, towards something more modular. So you do need to know how to steer it to get the best results. But I'm happy with this result. I think it's a step in the right direction. And most important of all, it works. And now we've got unit tests around it. So that's a big step forward. Okay, let's leave it there. So GPT meets legacy code. It did eventually win against the legacy code, but it was a bit of a journey, and particularly when it came to that large refactoring it did, it made me very uncomfortable that it was making so many changes. It did feel like it's sometimes a bit of a one-shot deal. It either gets it right or it doesn't, and if it doesn't, that, as you've seen going through that process, its understanding and my understanding of the code start to drift apart. It's much better than it was with GPT 3.5, where in every new response, every new generated response, the model of the code just changed completely. So it was like trying to pin down smoke, trying to get a complete source listing from it. Okay, let's leave it there. That's been fun. I'm going to do a couple more videos on this and then finally do a sort of a summary, like a presentation video, just to summarize my thoughts and collect them all together into one much shorter video, hopefully, about where I think GPT might sit within the development ecosystem, and where I found it useful and where I've not found that it really helps me that much at all. Okay, until the next video, you take care.